Okay, we have Richard Welch, the head of programmatic advertising from Flipboard. He's going to introduce the rest of our panelists. And Richard, I'll let you take it from here.
Cool, great. Can people hear me without the microphone? Yeah? Need it for the recording. All right, I'll speak into it. All right, is that better? All right, cool. So we have a great group here. I think that goes without saying. My list is out of order, but we have Jesse Hurwitz, Senior Director of Monetization at Jump Ramp Games. Who's next? We have David. David Leviev is the Director of Programmatic Partnerships at TimeHop. Who's next? Megan. We have Megan Hartman, who is a Global Programmatic Lead at Soundcloud. And then we have Osnat Koenig. Did I say that properly? Yeah. Director of Sales and Business Development at Mobfox. And so, as the title would suggest, mobile and programmatic, past, current, and future. I really want this to be a conversation about just programmatic in general. And, you know, as it says, past, present, future, where we've been, the challenges we still face, and where we think we're headed. And so I guess as such, I'd first want you guys to, I guess, introduce yourselves and tell us what your company does and what your day-to-day is kind of like.
Sure. I'm Jesse. Work at Jump Ramp Games. We are a mobile game company with one flagship app called Lucktastic. Lucktastic is a place where people can come and play for lifestyle type and reward moments. So it's really kind of a crossroads of gaming and consumer rewards. Our users typically play about 25 mini games a day. They're opted with different type of lifestyle moments. We have a brand selling team. We have a CPI selling team. Then we also work with third-party ad networks, programmatic exchanges. We do some header bidding as well. My day-to-day is really running our monetization products, and what that is we built a customized monetization stack. That stack is proprietary and allows us to actually break out all of our users by cohorts. From those cohorts, we're actually able to then send the proper traffic to the proper partner, as not all network or programmatic partners monetize the same way. So we have a lot of granular control over our users. We know in-app purchase, over 22 million downloads, so all ad supported. Heavy, rich media, rewarded video, playable ads. We do some brand interstitials as well.
Hi guys, I'm David Leviev. I work at TimeHop. For those of you who don't know, TimeHop is a social media app which allows their users to tap into their social media accounts such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And really what it does is it aggregates all their users' content, photo, and things like that all in one place. So they get essentially a throwback Thursday every day. And they get to relive their past memories. So what I do, I'm really the head of all programmatic solution. I've also helped build a custom ad server for TimeHop that allows programmatic spend called Nimbus. And what Nimbus does is it's a custom ad server that really monetizes specifically to our users, similar to actually what Jesse was saying, where we can really target our users and fluctuate with bid floors. So for example, generically we have CPM floors that, or as normal publishers kind of send a CPM that goes across the board. But really that didn't really make sense for us. We understand that no two users are the same. So understanding that, we built a second algorithm that determines the value of each user. So we set bid floors for that specific user and also that for every specific request. So on top of that, my real day-to-day is to reach out to partners that have similar interests to what we're doing. We really can monetize on our specific user base. So yeah, that's what I do.
Hey everyone, I'm Megan Hartman, Global Programmatic Lead at Soundcloud. Soundcloud, for those of you who don't know, we are the world's largest open audio platform and the first place for creators. So we have audiences in over 180 countries and territories today. We are as much about the creators as we are the listeners, and really fostering a community and relationship between the two, helping up-and-coming creators to really drive awareness to their craft and their content that they host on our platform. We're commercially operating in 9 markets today, but we are looking to expand next year, market expand. My day-to-day involves, I joined SoundCloud a year ago to help establish Programmatic and really grow this as a new business stream, business line. It's been a super exciting and very event-filled past year in helping to bring on the right programmatic partners for our very unique use case. So it's been exciting, growing programmatic. I think one of the many best kept secrets about SoundCloud is that we not only have audio, but we also have video inventory as well. Not video content, but video inventory. And I'll get into it a little bit later, just how closely we work with our brand partnerships team. And we also do incredible things like sponsored publisher profiles, native takeovers, like just amazing, really interactive 360-degree programs that are involve working with the artists and helping to create connections between brands and not just the listeners, but the creators as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Osnat for Mobfox. Mobfox is an audience-based SSP that help publishers to maximize their revenue, programmatic revenue, using data and premium demand. My day-to-day is basically speak with a lot of app developers, understand their needs, and recruit them to Mobfox. Then we build a plan how we can help them to monetize the app better, ad sizes, formats, and others. Our main focus is display and video, and we have offices around the globe here in New York, Tel Aviv, Beijing, and Vienna. That's about it.
Great, thank you. I was worried, because I'm usually on the other side of these things, that I was going to dominate the conversation. I needed them to, but those explanations were pretty deep, so I don't think I'm going to have problems with getting you guys to speak up. So I guess just to set the stage, I wanted to open up with a couple stats. Cliche, I know, but most people here have probably heard most of these, typical mobile stats. But per the Mary Meeker report that came out the other day, time spent online was up 18 minutes more per day, per person, to almost 6 hours a person. And the majority of that time was spent in-app. So that's no surprise to us, right? From a spend perspective, it's said that 75% to 80% of programmatic spend in 2018 will be executed across mobile environments. So I wanted to unpack that a little bit, and I'm going to go down the line here again. How much of your business is private marketplace versus open exchange, and why would you say that is? Jesse?
Sure. So, I think we're a little deeper than that. I think we tend to work on a heavy amount of ad networks. But when it does come to programmatic, I'd say the majority of our transactions right now are coming through the open exchange. We have moved into the private marketplaces, and what we're kind of tackling is that the agencies want to buy mobile app inventory, right? And they don't feel comfortable going out and just sourcing that on the open exchange. None of us up here, but there's clearly a fair amount of nefarious apps in the App Store, and there's some current concerns over purchase. So they want you to come in, kind of go through, whitelist you, make sure you feel comfortable. Then they ask you to move to this private marketplace, part of their business. The challenges we've really seen with that, though, is that a lot of the standards from desktop are trying to be shoved into mobile, right? And we'll work with our buyers and our teams at the agency, and they will have activated all these different standards or settings, and nothing's buying. And we're like, well, what's going on? Well, we look at this switch. Well, that only works in desktop, right? Like that's never going to work in mobile, and it's stopping mobile. And we go back through another list. So I think really the challenges we're seeing in these private marketplaces is the education. And I think the education needs to start with people like us. I think it needs to start with the tech vendors. We really need to start working with our agency partners as they want to move more and more into app and buying comfortably. I think it's up to us to really let them know which standards work, which technologies are activated, and how to properly buy in that private marketplace environment.
Makes sense. David?
Oh, we're going down the line. Okay. So yeah,
it's an easy format for me. So.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, I completely agree. I think that there is a disconnect, specifically for the desktop and mobile world, where, like you said, desktop is really being shoved into the mobile frame of things. However, when you set up PMP deals and when you try to implement it, all of a sudden you see zero activity, zero spend, and that's just because it just doesn't work. It's apples and oranges. You spend weeks troubleshooting and all of a sudden the campaign is already ended and you don't understand why that spend hasn't worked, and it's really just because of that communication and that disconnect between the PMP world and the open market exchange. And on top of that, I'm going to go ahead and say 90% of TimeHop inventory is spent on the open, and that's really just because one, our solution is a header bidding solution, so it allows for an equal auction across all of our partners. With that said, if a PMP deal is live, there's no real reason to prioritize that deal if their CPM or the price point that they're going to purchase on is going to be competitive. They should win in the open anyway. So with that, I believe that programmatically, in the open market exchange, that really that's where the industry is migrated, and it's really heavy, and it's really where I think that it's going to continue to stay until either the communication between the PMP and open marketplaces start closing in terms of the gap, and on top of that, I believe for PMP deals, the data that should be sent, or the data that we are passing for PMP specifically, should be more lucrative than in the open, and then if that is the case, that CPM should be even more inflated. Thusly, in a header bidding solution should win anyway.
Sure. Yeah, and by the way, if anyone has anything to interject, feel free to, or an opposing thought. Because personally, from the Flipboard perspective, we're hoping that PMPs scale and work. That's where we want our money to go. But I totally understand that makes sense from a technical perspective. Megan?
So same tune at SoundCloud. No pun intended there. That was really corny. Although I do love puns. So when we first launched Programmatic last January, naturally we were seeing majority of the revenue come in through open marketplace. And over the course of the last year, we've really seen the scales shift, and majority of the revenue is coming in through PMP. What I attribute that to is a couple of different things. Audio open marketplace support at scale really isn't as solidified. Audio, it makes up our bread and butter and 75% of our inventory today, but there isn't that support for audio today at scale. Number two, I'd say it's our premium first-party data, as well as audience, and I don't want to sound like a brat by saying the market was hungry for this premium audience, but 77% of our audience is under the age of 34, and half of our audience is under the age of 24. And this is a really prime consumer target population. We have really rich first-party registration data, and you can slice and dice it a few different ways. So I attribute it to that because that data is only available via PMP. We don't make our data available in the open marketplace. And it's just, I think we've done such a great job over the course of the last year helping to use open as a lead gen exercise, and really helping to migrate those buyers over to PMP. A number of different factors why, the listener is higher up in their user session, data's available, higher priority, better customer service. But today we're fortunate enough to say that we're seeing majority of the revenue come in through PMP, and eventually, ideally, 100%, to be sold out in the PMP layer would be amazing.
That's interesting. Your demographics are like kind of mirror image of ours, so maybe we should make like an in-app consortium so we cover everything.
I like it.
We should talk about that. Hey, Osnat, as far as your business goes?
So what we see in the PMPs is that most of the publishers selling the same inventory, basically, in the PMP and the open exchange. So we find it hard to explain to the demand partners why they should pay more for the same. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is also a gap that might be considered. I think that SoundCloud, from what you mentioned, you're selling it differently, right? You're selling the audience, while other publishers selling the same.
So maybe different ad units, data. Yeah, we just had a session internally. So I run these educational programmatic sessions at Flipboard, and you get all kinds of crazy questions from different departments and things like that. But this session was on upselling from open exchange to private marketplace, and a few of the sellers raised their hands and said, "I don't know what to use to upsell." And I'm like, okay, this from a product perspective makes me understand that I need to bifurcate. Separate those offerings and make it so that it's worthwhile for them to want to upsell into the private marketplace.
If I can add to that, I completely agree with you, Osnat. I feel like a lot of the conversations that I've been having is that why should we buy this premium CPM for PMP deal when we could just wait for it to hit the market. So for TimeHop specifically, we're kind of brainstorming internally on what we can do to add that data. And like I said, we want PMPs to be a bigger kind of player. So things that we've trying to implement are such as kind of scraping our user content, allowing that. So for example, if a user in the last 7 days ever commented something like, "Hey, I had caramel coffee macchiato," or whatever the case was, we have that data, and now we can programmatically send it to specific PMP deals that says, "Hey, listen, this user buys coffee. Dunkin' Donuts, you should now sell directly to this kind of deal," and that's the kind of data that we're kind of trying to spearhead and have some sort of leadership role in to try to differentiate the open market and the PMP role. But really, that is our biggest hurdle too. The fact that data is the same right now. Why spend it on the PMP?
Right. That makes sense. I guess on the PMP front, it sounds like there's different breakouts as far as who has what going into PMP versus Open Exchange. Are there any success stories or I guess A+ students? And if you're not allowed to share that, I have a few of my own that I know I'm allowed to share. But it's interesting to me, to the point you brought up in the beginning. We see this all the time from some of the biggest trading desks: Cadreon, Spark Foundry, OMD. I guess it's just a lack of education where they're bidding on desktop inventory, or they don't understand that it needs to be eMRAID, or they can't use cookies to target. I've seen a few people: Google, Target, Starbucks, T-Mobile, AB InBev is coming on board on our platform. They're all monster buyers. They've all figured out ways to convert from cookies to mobile IDs and get over some of those technical challenges. So I'm just wondering if you've seen varying levels of success from different buyers, or what's been your experience with that? That's open to anyone.
We're seeing a very similar roster of all-stars who are doing it right. And I wish there was a way to extract those learnings and best practices and be able to apply it anonymously to other brand partners. But that's a secret to their sauce. Of course, they don't want to share for competitive advantage. I mean, one easy solution that we've seen that just scales very well is ROS, run a site, run an audience not targeted. And I think that's a really good phase one approach for brands, especially that's how we've sold testing to PMP with our brands. Is like a phased approach. Target one, cast a wide net, and then hone it in to more targeted. But really to identify audience alignment. Cast that wide net, and that's a strategy that we've seen the winning brands or the top spenders employ, and it's worked. But there's not enough for us. We're in a bit of a tough place because audio is such a nascent format, and video and audio both are too programmatic. So it's a tough challenge. It's a good challenge to have because they're both really premium and high impact. But that's where we're at today.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. I know it's not easy to share that kind of information. We've been digging for case studies internally, and we're actually offering, this goes back to when I was at Datalogix, at Conde. We'd offer free media saying, can we have a case study with your name? People don't, they don't want to come out and be listed. And it's tough to present a blind case study to your buyers because, there's skepticism in sales. I'd like to bring it back the other way. I'm just going to keep sticking with this up and down thing. From a tech compatibility perspective, so we kind of talked about some of the challenges, what makes it hard to make private marketplace deals work, what might be limiting us on open exchanges, right, as far as, you see bids coming in and then they don't turn into impressions, and we can kind of speculate as to why. There's probably incorrect settings going on over there. So like I said, I'd like to bring it back the other way, starting at the other end. From a tech compatibility standpoint, what challenges have you experienced, and what's interesting on the horizon? I guess that's like recent announcements in the mobile app space that's going to make us more competitive with desktop. I know there's a lot to unpack there, but yeah.
So I think that the main gap in the education here is the whitelist. The brands are still doing whitelist label, and like they did in the desktop area, the same on the app area, and it's not the same. In the mobile, you can target user, and you should do more like user whitelist, because if you saw the user on the desktop, it doesn't mean that you need to buy him or her on the Newsweek app. Maybe you can find them on Flipboard or in SoundCloud. And I think that this is the main problem here with the brand or the agency budget, that are not shifting toward the in-app world, but stick on the mobile web, on the desktop area more. And once they will understand the data capabilities that can target or retarget users, the budget will start flowing to this direction as we see it.
Seems like every day there's a new tech issue or culprit that comes up. A year ago, I started making
a new partner you have to pay.
Or a new partner you have to pay to be able to help distill or verify. A year ago, I started because I joined SoundCloud from Time Inc., where it was all desktop display, easy peasy, off the shelf solutions, and that is not the case for the in-app world plus audio. So it's like a double negative almost sometimes. But it's a good challenge to have. We're working through it. I started making a list of challenges, like a PMP troubleshooting doc, and the list just kept growing and growing and growing.
We should share that buyer guidelines doc. I have one too. Spotify actually gave me theirs. Yeah. I made mine, but yeah, it probably says the same stuff.
I mean, we could turn it into like a choose-your-own-adventure path of sorts. Do you require VPaid, SDK, IAS, and it's just like, the list kept growing, and then user agent string came up, and like incompatibility. And there's so much that has come up, and it almost looks like at this point, like those publishers who are working with a ton of partners in their ads.txt file, and you can see it there. It's almost like such a long list. But it's good to have this information because it is like lifting up the hood and allows us to understand, what is important. One thing that getting this group together has done is we're going to make this a more regular conversation. There's a lot of desktop pubs that get together, or display pubs, desktop. Yeah. And there's not enough of these conversations happening, and we've agreed that there's power in our voice that we can help to hopefully shorten that list or solve for many of the issues that we're
I think
facing.
A bunch of us have made that transition, right? Like I was Conde to an app. You were Time Inc. to an app. Yeah, and so if anyone is interested in that get together, revenue in-app get together, let us know. See us afterwards.
Yeah, let's do it.
So for TimeHop, technical issues were much like Osnat's, just because we are running our custom ad server, and the reason why is because when I first started at TimeHop, everything was an SDK, and we were forced to really just abide by the SDK and have that SDK traffic all of our inventory. That was very limiting to us. We didn't really like that approach. We didn't like that one partner was really cannibalizing, monetizing, cherry picking the inventory, and then having to pass to someone else. And then having thus a waterfall solution. And in header bidding environment and header bidding world right now, why would you do something like that when you're leaving money on the table? So moving forward, we decided to build this kind of ad server. But with that ad server came a lot of technical issues. So one of those being, video render rates. Having a custom video player was like pivotal for us, just because I'm just going to be completely transparent with you guys. When we first started, our video render rates were like 35%. It was terrible, and that's
good actually. Sometimes.
Yeah, my render rates are lower because of the pre-caching or something. The numbers are all wonky. I don't know.
But that's such a crazy idea that you just set up an auction. You have a buyer that says, hey, I'm going to pay you $10 CPM for this user, and then that money is just not being monetized. And it's not like oh, we could have monetized. No, you did. You sold it. You just weren't able to render it. So that was one of our biggest, really kind of head scratchers on
I think Uber said this recently. There was like a whole article about it. Bennett over at Uber was talking about forget these other metrics and viewability and some of this other stuff going on. The ads you're bidding on and winning aren't actually turning into impressions.
Exactly.
and
it's just such a sad thought because you've done everything right up until that point, but really it's the player that's just not able. And these are various kind of aspects too, just like mime types or just any kind of errors that the video player just can't just render for users. And on top of that, I mean, I can go on and on, but so there were so many technologies like such as, and I think you're going to speak to it later, like viewability. I'm hearing a lot of advertisers just block inventory that if you're not running with third-party analytics, like Moat, like Comscore, whomever, they're just going to block you no matter where your inventory is coming from. So having now a new goal of let's implement an OM SDK and have that metric now being passed on every request. So there's just, and I feel like once we're like having the round of applause in our office, like, yes, we successfully figured out and troubleshot this issue. Next week, there's something else.
I think both of you, kind of have your own tech that you're building, which is different than kind of Megan and myself. So it's the choose your own adventure point. I guess it's interesting. So from like, I guess both from a tech compatibility standpoint, what challenges have you experienced, just like everyone else, but also like, what advice can you give as far as taking more control of your inventory?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the tech challenges we've had are that there's not a lot of new and experimental ads coming through the exchanges, right? The rewarded videos, the playables, the highly engaging kind of mobile-first units. There's not a lot of liquidity in the exchanges currently. And that's been the hope of mobile, right? I think we've all sat up here. I actually came from being an ad tech vendor my entire career as AdMeld and Google and some other folks. So this is my first jump coming into a publisher, right? A year ago, I probably would have sat up here pounding my fists, programmatic the whole way. Like, if you're not doing it, you're doing it wrong. And what I've really realized now is it's just a bunch of desktop units shoved into mobile, right? They don't monetize at the high rates you can get from rewarded or playable. And right now, that's a huge challenge to be able to activate those dollars, and we drive significant revenue from them. And on top of that, with the other issues, minus the liquidity, you start taking in the taxes, right? And I call it the VIG. So I don't know how many of you have ever placed a bet with a bookie, but if you go place a bet with a bookie, they put a VIG on. It's a high percentage that you owe them on top of the money you bet. If you don't pay them on Friday, they come collect that VIG, right? The exchanges today are no different. It's a huge VIG for them not really doing much half the time, right? We manage our entire ad stack. We don't need the hands-on service that they can provide. I just need a pipe to execute a deal. And if I'm getting a CPM of $50 for, say, why should I be paying you, a 10% tax when I know somebody else is closing in the marketplace at $250 and paying a 10% tax, right? Like, that's improportionate. And it's really, for us, it's slowing us down to moving into the exchange world. And I'll take one level deeper about the units and how we've figured out how to farm it. We've created monetizable moments. So we love playables, right? But we did experiment, and we shoved a whole bunch of playables in our app. Within like 3 days, I got about 15 complaints from my founders to our customer service team. All our users were like, "What are you doing to me? These things are insane. They don't take forever." So we're like, okay, but they liked them. That was the key thing. But they said they liked them, so we backed it out. And what we did was we actually created an app, a playable moment where we asked the user, "Hey, would you like to opt in to play this mini game from one of our partners? Yes or no?" If they select yes, they're actually taken to this ad experience. Now, for our ad partners, the completion rates are 99%. The conversion rates are through the roof. We're making a very high CPM. And if we have a user, if they say no, they don't want to see that, they're taking it on through a different ad experience, or a different funnel, right? So this is all about creating the unit, the right type of experience at a session-based level, and understanding what your users are going to monetize, and personally trying to keep as much of the revenue in-house as possible.
But they have to choose, right?
They have to choose.
They can't just swipe away.
No, there's no swiping. You're going to get an ad no matter what.
Okay, gotcha.
You're going to get a playable ad, you're going to get a rewardable ad, you're going to get a brand ad. We don't give you no ads.
We're so UX focused, at least at Flipboard, and I forgot to introduce myself, but hopefully everyone knows what Flipboard is. But we're a content aggregation and curation platform. It's been around for quite some time, and we've been so UX focused. When I came in, they said, the CTO came to me and said, you're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do this. No SDKs. And I'm like, all right, how am I going to make money? And we've been jamming a lot of desktop-oriented executions, and that's our programmatic solution. And I think, to your point, having more of those engaging experiences and things like that, we can definitely yield higher CPMs and stuff like that. So that's very interesting. But you're saying a lot of that comes from the networks you're working with and those SDKs, or are you building these solutions yourself?
So we've built the solutions ourselves, and we're the opt-in, right? That's our monetization service. That's kind of our customized, bread and butter technology we've built. It's proprietary. We don't expose those cohorts to anybody. We work very closely with our ad network partners in understanding on the cohorts. We also do work with a provider called SafetyK, which helps manage all of our SDKs. They allow us to see crashes ahead of time. We can control what data is going to certain partners, right? So we've implemented a lot of little different tools and bolted them together to give us this solution. We've taken our BI teams and dug into all the data analysis. And no ad network's created the same. They all like different pockets of inventory, and we figured out how to farm that inventory at the right user, right partner, right time, right fixed placement.
Cool. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. So, Megan, SoundCloud has been making headlines lately, and you guys have been a pioneer in the, how many different descriptors can I add together here? Mobile app, programmatic, audio space. What challenges have you seen with that? We don't have the other three big players. There's really four of you in this space. So what challenges have you seen, and what's exciting from that perspective?
What's most exciting? I'll start with what's exciting because I always like to lead with good news. I'd say most exciting is just groundbreaking. Being able to work with not just our platform pubs and vendors on helping to develop new solutions, and really like having the ear of these like major players in the space. That's pretty cool. But also working so closely with our competitive set and what I like to call a competitive alliance. I think that there's more strength in numbers working together. I mean, there's a really obnoxious Aristotle quote that's like the whole is greater than the sum of our parts, and I love that, and I think it's so true. But it's just like working so closely with Pandora and Spotify and these other partners in the space and clearing some of the brush together. But also, so that's the fun, that's the pro. The con, I would say, is being able to scale as quickly as we'd like to, or need to. Some of the tech issues that we've seen, so there were some legacy business decisions before I came on board, like where you don't implement third-party SDKs. Oh, great. Okay, that's going to make my life a lot more challenging. But there is a movement in the industry to have like SDK-less implementations, and I think that there's a lot of good to come from that solution. We're not there yet, but I think it's figuring out how to pass, retrieve, and tap into target data, without those, without SDKs. It's just these all like things that we want to make happen. We're pioneering, audio programmatic, and that's really exciting because it's like in the early days of display, or 4 years ago, video. It's like it's learning like what works, what doesn't, and then how to apply that to, the greater good. If that makes sense. Because what we believe is, audio is an emotionally driven medium, and it's the most personal medium to date. So how to really like tap into that and help to give advertising, a good name that it's, we're creating connections through audio rather than just, selling more deals and promos and brands. So that's cool. The humanitarian in me.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess something that might be interesting, depending on what you can share, again. It'd be interesting to understand because, we have these challenges in programmatic, and a lot of it is based on education, externally and internally. And so I'd say as such, programmatic, I liken it to social media in 2008. Everyone wants to plant their flag in it. You know, you had the media agencies saying, I do social media. You had the PR firm saying, I do social media. And so it's kind of a little tug of war. I think that's where programmatic is these days, because you have the agencies consolidating. You know, you have Acuin and Viviki, then they break it apart and they decentralize it. And the same thing kind of happens reactively on the publishing side as per what the agencies do. At least that's the trend I'm seeing. From your perspectives, like, how are you structured, I guess, from an organizational standpoint that helps you more properly sell programmatic and educate internally and externally? So I guess what I'm asking is, you know, does your sales team sell both IO and programmatic? And anyone can take that.
So our sales team, we do direct, PMP, programmatic, and we really structure everything to kind of be conformed to look organic for our users, meaning that the way that they navigate through our app is really the way that they navigate for if it's going to be customized for the direct ads, or if it's going to be a programmatic sponsored ad. And what we do is we set everything up server to server side for programmatic specifically. And with that said, we really wanted to conform it this way so that we don't have any question marks that come up. We don't want to have, you know, ads that are coming off the screen, and this is to your point with the SDK list kind of solution. This is the approach that we went through, and this is the conformity that I'm speaking more about. With the S2S API integration, we found that once you really get the formula down, it applies across the board. Every single demand partner can apply S2S integration. Whether they want to or not is a different story. And that's really been my struggle in trying to get that. But to any other publisher, I would say that if you guys are trying to have an SDK-less kind of integration, I would definitely support a server-to-server rather than a client-to-server integration, just so that you can have everything really streamlined one way, and that way you can really understand from the beginning to the end of how your programmatic sales start and end. And on top of that, real-time reporting too. I think that that's a big tool as a publisher to have. For example, if you're going to implement a new partner, there's no real reason to wait 24 hours to understand that that partner lost 100% of your inventory because of integration issues. Or if there was you know, discrepancies of any sort, you really have that data in real time. And allowing that gives you full access to what you can do, how you can troubleshoot immediately, and on top of that, if the demand partner is even worth it. I mean, if they're returning, and I understand that, you know, demand takes a couple of weeks to implement, and that makes sense. You know, campaigns turn on and off, so you have to wait for that to really jump on board. But if you're really seeing that what the partner has promised you isn't necessarily what's returning to you, it's a quick turn of a switch. So you really have that power in.
We kind of blended two things here on my list. So
can I just jump in on the real data one thing? I totally agree.
Yeah, go for it.
I think you're spot on with real data. Like we are big believers in that. We optimize our partners almost hourly. Yeah. Like we have open lines of GChat with every one of our partners. I know what demand is coming, what time it's coming, how much of it's coming, and we make those moves hourly.
And especially if some errors start happening, timeouts, you start latency starts increasing because
how are you structured from this standpoint in order to support that, like just from a team perspective?
So unfortunately, there isn't real one platform that can aggregate all your data. So we are.
I mean, from a human resources standpoint, like
a lot of
individuals.
Coffee.
Yeah. So it's just you.
A lot of coffee.
Because I just hired 2 people, and it's not even close. We're scratching the surface of what we can do.
That really is just it. I mean, we have in our offices we have TVs plastered all over the place, and it has different data points. And if you ever see a spike in something happening, you know immediately like you have to troubleshoot. You have to understand what's happening, because if one partner decides to break down, or if something's internally happening that they don't even know about because they don't have real-time reporting, they don't understand that they're blanking or they're timing out. They affect every other partner, especially if you're in an open type of
I'm in a
function.
waterfall, so it's
right, exactly.
So I have one that, has a 12-hour lag on reporting, and another one that's in relative real time. So managing that, we're trying to get a reporting tool to unify all of that. And that's why I said you blended two things here, because it's trying to understand from an organizational standpoint, like who you have working on this stuff, and then also what they're responsible for, and that bled into the tools you're looking for, which was going to be my closing, but
Sorry.
Whatever, we merged it. It's fine. It's fine. So I guess Megan, from a how you're set up and what you're focused on, how does that look for you?
Yep. So at SoundCloud, Programmatic is part of the brand partnerships team, our sales team. We are one, special unit as Programmatic may be. We work very closely together, and we have 15 sales reps, and from LA to New York, and we all work very closely and collaboratively. And it's unlike what I've experienced in the past, where Programmatic has been like a separate, like siloed off from the sales team, which I don't think is a winning solution at all. We each need each other. The sales folks, direct sales folks, they serve as the brand strategists. Programmatic really serves as solutions, audience-based solutions, and we really we complement them. We complement their conversations, and we both own pieces of the opportunity that, again, this comes back to the whole is greater than the sum of our parts. Not to be corny, that's what I default to because it's true. And we work very closely with them, and I will say, so we are currently a team of 2, Programmatic. For the first 6 months, it was just me, and I wish I could clone myself so many times. Programmatic, the team could not grow fast enough, and we're still very leanly spread too thin. But we're growing. We have another one coming, a director coming in a couple weeks, which is really great. And then hopefully we'll add another analyst by the end of the year, because the more partners that programmatic and digital advertising is just getting so much more sophisticated, and which requires more data, and it's no longer there's no blanket solution, there's no one size fits all. It really requires a true analyst sitting and looking at the data, and we don't have those monitors, but it's such a good idea to be able to identify spikes.
I've always wanted that command
issues.
center. We talked about this at Condé Nast. We had an analyst who wanted screens up there so that we can monitor it in more real time, which I think could be an interesting investment. It's also super cool to look at, but I think it's our structure, just I guess to add to that, from Flipboard's perspective, we're much more focused on trying to get the private marketplace deals. So as such, we have one individual who we hired from MoPub. I'm like, this guy's got to know mobile app ad tech inside and out at this point. He handles the deal IDs, private marketplace stuff, liaising with the sales team, right, and dealing with their complaints. And he's got a better bedside manner because the former or the other side of the house, he doesn't like to deal with the sellers and things like that. And so he's more of an analyst and does the open exchange, floor setting, Facebook audience network. And so we're trying to delineate that way. Obviously they switch hit and cross streams sometimes, but that's interesting. And I guess we went through everyone, and Osnat, it doesn't really I guess this question doesn't pertain to you as much because you're an SSP, so everyone is programmatic. There are no programmatic titles there, right? So that makes sense. But for you, we had already touched on the separation of, well, I guess we touched on it a little bit. Maybe we touched on it more in the hallway. But the gaps of education in that you go to mobile events, there's not as many Fortune 500 brand advertisers there or agencies there. You go to IAB leadership, and the mobile representation, I would say, is pretty weak. This has been one of my gripes since I've come over to the mobile space. We need cross-pollination. We always talk about lack of education. Can you give me some of the examples of the gaps of education? I know we talked about the technical challenges, but anything else you might think of, and how can we work on getting better here as an industry?
So I think that also the vendors that are handling the measurement, we are now more in the moat area, but agencies are still looking at vendors that are pretty good in savvy desktop vendors, and not choosing the right vendors to know the in-app world.
Right. So you have the media maths, you have some of the major DSPs who we're used to, who all of us are used to working with, and then switching over to the mobile side is not as easy as I assumed it would be, and I think as some of these platforms say, yeah, we do mobile as well. So I guess it's still you have specialist platforms still, and I guess that is that the recommendation to the agencies and the buyers?
Right. To understand that mobile is different, different ecosystem with different measurement, different viewability, as we spoke before. Another thing is about the data. I mean, they're using all the good data companies that are less into the mobile ecosystem, and they don't have the right users. They have the users on the desktop side, but not on the mobile.
Great, cool. I think we're pretty much out of time. So any questions from the crowd here? Anything we didn't touch on?
Yeah,
go for it.
Just a quick question, a little bit more on the management for SoundCloud. How do you deal with international?
That's a loaded question.
We wanted to avoid GDPR if that's where you're going.
I'm thinking about, I'm imagining SoundCloud probably has a large user base in sort of maybe more difficult to monetize markets.
Yes.
Can you maybe talk a little bit more about like what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, absolutely. International is completely different. You know, the nuances across the buyers and the audiences. And something I've learned in the last year is that France all but goes on holiday all of July and August. Was not aware of this. It's interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, we see listenership go down and as well. How do we deal with them? Very intimately. I mean, I think that what I've also learned working with international partners is that it's not as much about. I don't want to say that there's a comparison of like quantity versus quality in the U.S. and versus international markets, but if you don't have a relationship with international partners and buyers, they won't spend with you, because they want to know not just like marketing all day. Like we can give them the stats on who our audience is, but if we don't have a relationship with them, they don't want to buy because it's a relationships business. So is the U.S. as well, but it's just it's different and it requires, I think, a little more. I'd love to connect with you after this, and
I would
sounds
echo
like you're
that.
of an
We have a European sales team, but as far as coverage in other markets, we don't have it.
you.
And it's Programmatic's responsibility to just monetize APAC and Latin America, and there's just not enough hours in the day. So if anyone can help me monetize inventory in those markets, what's up? Question? Or you can help me. All right, excellent. Good. Okay, cool. Any other questions, or I think we're out of time. Yeah, cool. All right.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.